Dr. Allison Bremner here with Cultivating Success. Tonight, I've got a special guest, a non-chiropractor. We're going to be talking about financing, debt, how to help you guys out. Super excited. Adam Carroll, thanks for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Dr. Allison. I'm a financial nerd. Like I'm a junkie when it comes to personal finance. And I realized several years ago that the majority of people are going to head towards their retirement years wondering if they can retire comfortably.
Yeah.
And it pains me, and particularly doctors who are out to help people, but have a hard time helping themselves sometimes.
Yeah, I think that the thing that people know the least is health and wealth.
Yeah,
And those are probably the two most important things in life.
right, right. I couldn't agree more. And have you heard of the book, The Body Keeps Score?
Yes.
I had it years ago. I read it. I was thinking about all the things that I was carrying. I had lower back issues and set down a number of the things that were just stressful in my life. But when all the money challenges were somewhat resolved, and I have a word for it, we call it just money irrelevancy. When money becomes irrelevant in your life, you can lay all that down, and then your health gets better. And I think there's so many people that are struggling under the weighted pressure and mounting pressures of finances that if they just tweaked a couple of things, they would actually feel better, both physically and financially.
Yeah, a lot of my patients, the ones that kind of struggle to get better, are the ones that are under a lot of stress. Now, maybe it's financial, maybe it's some other stress, but
Yep.
I see the ones that get better quickly are the ones that like have a good handle on, whatever stress they have outside of the office. And
Yeah.
definitely financial is going to be a big one.
No doubt. No doubt. I would love to chat through all of this stuff that, how I can help your listeners and all of that. But where you take me where you want it to go.
Yeah, well, I think let's just start off with a broad sort of business owner. So most
Yeah.
chiropractors either are an associate in an office, which a lot of times is building their kind of their own clientele within underneath that doctor,
Yep.
or your own office. So like, what do you see like big mistakes business owners make with like, building wealth?
This goes both for chiropractors and it goes for a number of other business owners that we work with at the Shred Method. Many of them are trying to build their wealth in their practice. And the intent is that, well, if I build this big enough and I can sell it someday, then I'll have this big golden parachute and I can walk away with blue sky. And the challenge is most businesses don't get sold. They simply go away. And it's like maybe 5 to 7% of all solopreneur or entrepreneurial businesses actually get purchased. So you could be doing all the right things to build your business. But if you're not also building wealth outside the practice, then you're speculating, you're gambling, right? You're taking a calculated risk to be sure, but there's quite a bit of risk involved to make sure that you can sell it at some point. So we want to begin building on the back end.
Sure. Well, any sort of service-based industry, personality drives that success. And I just had
Right.
one associate leave and an associate take over a practice. We lost half the patients. I mean, I knew that was going to happen.
Wow.
The attrition rate was going to happen, and
Yep.
we estimated that. But like, he's not her. I mean, we could have got a clone,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like they weren't going to transfer. And she's like this small, 5'5", maybe that's probably an overestimate, like 5'3", small girl, and he's like a 6'2" big dude. So it's like
Yeah.
some people are like, "Ooh, like, are you gonna like crunch me?" And so like,
Right.
we didn't see the transition. I mean, we had a good healthy amount, but to your point, it's hard to sell a business that you've built and you've been in there for years because they don't want to go somewhere else.
That's right. That's right. And so to do that for doctors that I'm going to speculate here, but I would guess that the majority of your listeners, they come out of school with a significant amount of student loans. It requires a significant upfront investment to open an office if you're opening one. And you're probably not making the kind of money that you would make as an owner if you're coming in as an associate, generally speaking. So there's some things that people need to do in order to set themselves up for financial success as a practicing doctor, as an example. And the way I would describe this is, let me start over. One of the things that I tell people often is that folks don't have an income problem, they have a liquidity problem. So most people make enough money that they can afford their lifestyle because the banks determine, here's how much of a car you can afford, here's how much of a house you can afford based on your expenses. This is what we think your budget should be. But most people's income is very, very inefficient. So as a doctor, you make your money at the practice, you go back, you pay your expenses, you pay maybe a mortgage payment, you pay your student loan minimum payments, maybe a little bit extra here and there, and you try and squirrel a little bit away at a time. And the challenge with that is it's very inefficient because your income should really do four things. It should pay your expenses, it should eliminate debt, it should build wealth, and you should be able to do good and or have fun with it. And what I found, Allison, is most people pay their expenses and have fun, and that's it, right?
Yeah, they
And
don't think about how another investment works, right? So like, oh, my practice is my investment.
that's right. And in reality, it is, and it's a great investment. You can throttle up or throttle down however you want. But the money that you're making, that you're taking home, you could be doing just a little bit more to increase the efficiency there. And if it is blasting away student loan debt or paying down a house, creating equity and more liquidity, that's really the secret. That's what we teach people how to do with the shred method.
Well, you're not speculating as far as student loan debt. I think the average chiropractor now, my girlfriend graduated, I think 2 years ago. And, I've have kind of a pulse on what the average doc now is, somewhere between 2 and 250 out of school. Yeah. And so you did a documentary, Broke, Busted, and Disgusted. Is that what it is?
Yes, Broke, Busted, and Disgusted.
So what was your motivation for that? And do you think this problem's getting worse?
My motivation was I was speaking on college campuses all across the country. And I had been, the running joke is I had been everywhere from Florida State University on the East Coast to the University of Spoiled Children on the West Coast, and everywhere in between. And I would ask students, how much will you have in debt when you graduate? And when I started presenting in like 2004, the number was, oh, I'll have 20,000 or 30,000. Those were the high number. 40 grand was a high number. And then over the course of the next 10 years, I was hearing 60 and 80 and 100. I met people with 100 and a quarter coming out of a bachelor's program. And then I was meeting masters and advanced level degrees that were in that 200 to 300 range. And it frustrated me to no end, because at 18 or 22 or 25, if you've never made real money, you have no conscious understanding of how much $300,000 in debt is at 8% or whatever they are, the going rate was. And furthermore, the government was, whether it was Sallie Mae or whoever the lending institutions were, Department of Ed primarily, but they're giving these loans out and they were saying, we're going to make college affordable. And what they were saying was, we're going to stretch out the payments as long as humanly possible, 40 years, 50 years in some cases. And people didn't realize just how much in interest they were paying. And the two greatest expenses that we have in life are taxes and the interest expense on debt. So in answer to your question, it's getting worse. I think that people are slowly coming to their senses that going to a 4-year degree or staying 5 years for a 4-year degree to get a piece of paper that may or may not be worth what they say it's worth. I think there are people starting to question that a little bit more. But I think for doctors, for dentists, for lawyers, anyone who's going to an advanced degree, we have to teach them. I think it is upon the schools to teach those graduates how to manage their debt and pay it down quickly, so it doesn't eat them alive 5 to 10 years into their practice.
Yeah, interest rate. The book I read was I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
Yeah.
And I read that probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I had never thought about interest rate and credit score.
Yeah.
Which is like the two things that no one talks about. And because you think, I can pay this debt down, but 7% interest is what my loans were at. And that makes it almost impossible. It's crazy. So you don't think about interest rates. And since then, my mortgage is 3% because I refinanced during my period of time. Every decision I make now is based on interest rates. And I didn't do that for a long period of time at a school and had never even thought or heard about it. So I think it's crazy and scary. And I had listened to your TED Talk, and I said this earlier, you had your kids play Monopoly with real money, and their decisions were much, much different. And, I think it's in school, it's so imaginary, because let me tell you the education that you get about student loans. You go to this class, they say, hey, if you buy a pizza now with your student loans, you're going to get interest on it and it's going to be more. Here's a piece of paper, sign it, and we'll give you some money. And it's pretend.
It's totally pretend. And I think you could give a million examples like it on college campuses, but I've been on a bunch of college visits with my kids, Allison, and one of the things I noticed was they're using finger scanners in dining centers. So if you want to get in, it's not a university ID anymore. They just, tap your finger and you walk in. And I asked the students, how much is lunch here? And they're like, oh, I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah.
It could have been $78. They would have paid no attention to it. And so in playing the game with my kids, I realized they were playing the game a certain way, which was like sort of outside the rules of the game. And I started questioning, are they doing this because the money is just tattered slips of paper now? And what if it was actually real cash on the table? Would they play differently? And so I put 10 grand in cash on the kitchen table and we played a game of Monopoly. And sure enough, they played differently. And it changed the way we taught our kids how to raise them around money and handle money. And, my line with them is I want you to have an MBA before you ever go to college. And the MBA stands for a massive bank account. Because I want you to understand, it's like having 10 grand is not an insurmountable task. Everyone should be able to do that.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, both money and wealth come from the parents. Like that, or you get lucky and kind of fall into something and learn about it. But most people, if they have any financial literacy, it's because their parents taught them, or they have, in the case of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, their friend's dad taught them.
No doubt.
Otherwise, you're in an uphill thing. And like you said, they make money nowadays. I like cash. My patients ask me, "Can I pay in cash?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course you can."
My favorite.
Yeah, but yeah, it's now it's a tap. It's a, it's nothing. It's not real. Like, how could you possibly pretend?
Yeah. Well, and especially going back to your comment about you get this from your parents. There is science now that says that our money psychology or our money personality is set by the age of 9. So by the age of 9, you have taken in all of the lessons from your parents, and that becomes your psychology around money. So there's a good friend of mine who the message she heard loud and clear was, you can't trust bankers. Don't trust bankers. You can't trust bankers. They'll take everything, And ultimately what she found out was her dad stopped making car payments and he got his car repossessed.
Yeah.
What she heard was, you can't trust bankers. And she would do everything she could to avoid, talking to a banker or engaging a banker or whatever. But she would happily pay with a credit card because she didn't equate the two. So she found herself with $25,000 in credit card debt and was just like, well, you can't trust bankers. So I do everything on my credit card.
Wow.
And
that's crazy.
We have these like weird stories that manifest however they manifest, but it literally puts us in the situation that we're in today. And, since we're talking about books, there's a great book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And he says, if you want to change the fruits, you must first change the roots. And the roots are, what did you hear growing up? And was it true, or was that just your parents' experience? And can you redefine or reframe what those roots were so that the fruits of your life change?
Yeah, my associates, the number one thing we work with is money mindset. And because most people have a poor money mindset, just from the simple fact of that money is evil or rich people are evil. So like, how could you possibly make money if you think, if I make money, I will be evil? I joke about like, who's the villain in the movie? Some rich dude, right? At the top of the like that's the villain. Like, and it's hard to fight against. And once you see it, you'll notice in every single movie, every single TV show, it's just, I am a conspiracy theorist, but like, they want to keep you poor. They want to keep you broke and sick. And so you have to overcome this infiltration, if you will, of normalized society.
No doubt.
Which is like, you're a good person if you don't have money. That's okay.
Yeah.
Nuts.
I could not agree more. I maintain that if you follow traditional advice, you will have traditional results.
Yeah.
And traditional results for most people are not great.
For sure. Let's talk about that. So like, what would you say chiropractors or anyone in business, what can they do different to like not follow that conventional wisdom that's typically taught?
Yeah. There is something known as doctoritis, where you start making decent money and you want to go live the lifestyle that you imagined living as a doc. I think we have to avoid that at all cost. And I'm not saying you got to live on beans and rice by any stretch of the imagination, but we do need to challenge the banker's business model. And we all live in a banker's business model. Drive, I would guess, 2 miles from your place in Boulder, there's probably 25 banks that are $10 million buildings, you know? And same is true here in Des Moines. I mean, I could drive 5 minutes away from my house and hit 10 different banks that are 10 to $20 million buildings. And the reason that that is the case is we are the banker's business model. So we are their compound interest vehicle. They loan us money, we pay it back. We never question it. And I just started questioning, is this the most efficient way to build wealth? To continue to make minimum payments or pay my mortgage over 30 years? Or could I challenge that notion? And I started asking myself the question, not how would I pay my house off early? How would I pay my house off by next year? And when you start to ask yourself bigger questions, bigger answers start to come forth. And I realized that if I was questioning the banker's business model and I could create some interest rate arbitrage, and I don't use a bunch of words that will confuse people, but I'm going to figure out a way to blast away the debt against my house and create equity, and then leverage the equity into investments. I'm effectively short-circuiting the banker. And if you looked at your mortgage, or if you haven't looked at your mortgage statement, I encourage you to, and add up how much in interest did you pay last year. And if it was over the standard deduction, you've just done your taxes, you get to write off 25.9 in mortgage interest. Or you can itemize above that. But for most people, they're spending $25,000 in interest, that they're paying their banker. So if you make $100,000, 25% of your income goes up in smoke, just like that.
Yeah. It's interesting to try to live a different life. I love cheap things, which I love that because the thing that matters to me most in this world, and I think we talked about this before you came on, is I love to play sports.
Yeah.
So I love time more than anything.
Cool.
I would much rather, don't get me wrong. We're about to go to Mexico and stay in a 5-star hotel for 5 days. But guess what? We saved for it, and we have a travel fund that we put money into. And so we're not like, oh, I'm just going to put this on my credit card and then pay it off later. Right.
Yeah.
So I do take breaks, but every day, I go in a store, I'm like, I don't want to buy that. And it's not like I'm depriving myself. I'm just thinking to myself, I could do X, Y, and Z with this rather than, just buy a bunch of crap, because that's what the bankers, they want you just to spend your money and need them. I would, and I don't think we have time to talk about that HELOC. You have a good strategy for a HELOC loan and investment. I'm not really sure we have time necessarily to talk on this podcast unless you can very simply describe that, but I'm personally interested in that.
Yeah. The key is, and this is maybe one of the things that I could suggest for docs, is if you have your own business and you own a home, you need a business line of credit and you need a home equity line of credit or a personal line of credit. And the reason that we would have that is it becomes a really amazing leverage tool. And what we're doing is we're using it to blast away the debt. So like Allison, I would love to run your numbers on student loans as an example and show you how fast you could actually knock those down using a line of credit as opposed to just making a minimum payment. And it's for some people, they see it and they go, it looks too good to be true. But I'll tell you, it's not magic, it's math. And the math is what makes the banks billions and billions of dollars in profit, because we never question it. So to put it into the arena for everybody, my wife and I had a $250,000 mortgage in 2012. We had just got a house, put 20% down, had a $250,000 mortgage. And when we devoted ourselves to using the shred method, 3.6 years later, we were mortgage free, and not on crazy income, definitely not on a doctor's income. It was just, we were using this model, this method, and it's amazing how fast it works.
Well, let's talk about that. So how would you describe the shred method, and is it for everyone?
The shred method is it is for anyone. Anyone can use it, provided that you have more money at the end of the month. You can't have more month at the end of your money, right? That does not work. And it goes without saying, but you can't borrow your way out of a spending problem. So if someone's spending too much flat out, then you got to get that under control. But if someone has an extra 500 or 1,000 or $2,000 a month, and you're just going, I don't know what exactly I should do with it. And if you call an advisor, they're going to say, stick it in an S&P 500 index and hope and pray that we get over 8% this year. This way is actually guaranteed. It's certain. If you make the payments as Shred tells you to do, you'll be out of debt in the amount of time that it tells you you're going to be out of debt. So it is like having a guide for your money to make sure that the money is being used the most efficient way possible. And generally speaking, the most efficient way is going to be blasting away debt in this environment, if only for 3 to 5 years, maybe. And then it turns into a wealth building tool. And we teach people through coaching, what do you do to build wealth on the backside of decreasing your debt or increasing your equity.
Awesome. Well, how would people get a hold of you if they're listening to this podcast? Like, man, I am in trouble and I want to not be in debt, or at least get an understanding of where my finances lie. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way is to go to theshredmethod.com. There is a 25-ish minute masterclass there that people can watch. And if you set it at 1.4 speed, I'm actually pretty understandable. So you'll get it done in 16, 17 minutes. But that will show you exactly what we're doing and the math behind it and everything. I would highly recommend, if you have folks that are intrigued by it, while you're slamming a sandwich at lunch, go watch the video, theshredmethod.com. And then you can set up for a 20-minute call with us, me and my team, and we'll gladly walk through, plug your numbers in, and show you what's possible.
Awesome. Well, Adam, I really appreciate you being on today. And I'm hoping that people take their finances serious, because sometimes they stick their head in the sand, think it's all going to go away. But you can always do something about it.
Absolutely. And I think, first of all, what you're doing is super important, because the tribe of people that you're communicating to need to stick together, need to share ideas. And when a great idea pops up, man, if that can spread like wildfire throughout the entire community and make everybody's life better, then it's a massive win. And that's what we're all about.
Thank you. Yeah, I really just want to bring information to, most of my audience is newer grads and some later students, because if you get I wish I would have known some of the things I know now back then. That would have been helpful. So I'm hoping to kind of do that.
Very cool. Well, thank you for having me, Allison. I greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, guys, this is Cultivating Success. We drop a new episode the first Monday and third Monday, and I will see you later.